spiraled out of control there then basically for the next few years, and then got arrested just after my 21st birthday. And this like Volkswagen, then a family wagon, then a van pulled up, and all of a sudden all the blue lights on them. I was like, fuck. It actually didn't even really sink in. The guy pulled up the door, says, "Are you Rory?" I says, "Nope." But then they knew it was me anyway. Took me out. The drugs were in the back of the boot. I actually told them. They actually didn't search the boot, which I thought was weird. But I told them the drugs were in the boot, which actually helped me in my case later, because I didn't try and I could have just said hid it, you know.
Yeah.
Today's guest is someone who's redefining what it means to build a bulletproof mindset in business and life. Rory Sloan is the founder of Resolute Minds, a platform dedicated to helping people master their mental game, break through limitations, and stay relentlessly focused on growth. From overcoming personal challenges to coaching others through their toughest mental battles, Rory has built a reputation for turning pain into purpose and helping others do the same. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a leader, or someone who's just hungry to level up, this episode is packed with the kind of raw, real talk you don't want to miss. This is a topic we've never touched on in the podcast. I'm super excited to get into it. You're watching the official Young Hunger podcast. So grab a cup of coffee, grab a cup of tea or whatever you fancy, and prepare to be inspired. Please welcome Mr. Rory Sloan.
I'm Rory Sloan, 24 from Belfast, and I'm the founder and managing director of Resolute Minds, an organisation to help young people around addiction and mental health. I'm so excited to be down here and speak on the podcast today. I'm sure it'll be a class episode. Keep it lit.
Rory, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
How do you feel? You feel all right?
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Ready to
You've
rock and roll.
done a podcast before, haven't you?
Yeah, I've done, well, I had my own podcast for a while, don't really do it anymore.
How'd you find that?
Yeah, it was good, hard work. A lot of hard work.
Yeah.
It was more the like, obviously setting it up. It wasn't like a room where you walked into. We had like tables and then had these things that like attach cameras on and all that there.
Yeah.
And then the editing side of it and all that, it was just,
Yeah.
by the time you put all the time in it, I was like, this isn't a priority. You know?
I know, but tell you, your story is super interesting because it's something we've actually never touched on, or this sort of type of genre on the podcast before. So I'm really interested in hearing more about you and your story and how you can help others. So like,
100%.
Like, where does this whole journey begin for you?
Yeah, so I suppose it begins like 13, 14 was whenever I first sort of started taking drugs.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of leaving sort of primary school, going into, which sounds really young when you speak about it now, you're like, fuck. But yeah, I was doing that sort of primary school to secondary school jump, you know, was pretty intense for me. You know, I went to Orangefield Primary School in East Belfast, loved playing football, loved messing around, all that kind of stuff. Then all of a sudden, I went to Inst, which is obviously very like, we'll call it prestige school. You know what it is. You know, they have that sort of, what would be the word, like description, you know, that's what people sort of look at them. And I think it was they're quite family orientated. So my dad went there. So then that's why they're more, don't really look at the results, to look at sort of how you got in. So I went there, and I think the second day, you know, I was sent home because my hair was spiked up, you know, that kind of thing. So straight away, I didn't feel comfortable. Felt quite out of place. They didn't let you play football, you know, until 5th year. Everyone there was like from Malone Road or Lisburn Road, and I was from East Belfast, you know.
Yeah.
They were all coming in with 20 quid a week pocket money, you know, I was coming in with 2 quid, you know, that kind of thing. And, you know, it was quite a lot. Looking back, I've actually only learned that that's sort of the root reason now through therapy. You know, obviously going through all that at the time, you know, I just thought that was life, you know, part of growing up. But I then started falling in with a lot of the older crowd kind of people, which is then when I started sort of smoking weed. And I started smoking weed just to basically fit in.
Yeah.
You know, that's how it started. Maybe like cope with going to school, cope with after school, you know, stuff like that there.
Yeah.
Went through like smoking weed on and off, then it went to sort of everyday kind of thing. Then I did go to then I went to Ease and MD, which were like my kind of downfall into the harder drugs. Like I was taking Ease in school. You know, my mum and dad had never been around drugs, so I was able to go home on MD, you know, and they wouldn't even have knew. You know, they would not know what signs to look for.
Yeah.
I'll actually never forget the first time I so I started selling drugs then, but it was more like I knew that if I got 7 grams, because I couldn't afford to buy it, and I sold it to my mates, I got mine for free, that kind of thing. And then the guy I got off also, like, he sold golf clubs. So I was able, and then I played golf at quite a high level, so I was able to get golf clubs for like cheaper, and then I give them to him, and then he gave me this, and then I was able to sell it, and that's how I kind of all started kicking off. And then I got into E's and MD, and then I remember trying MD for the first time. Was actually I found it in my shoe, so I did on a Tuesday night before school, and I just said, "Fuck it, I'm just gonna whack it into me." I was hallucinating. I thought people were in my room. I was talking to them. Tried to take it off school the next day, because obviously there's a thing called a come down, which I didn't even know existed. I felt so depressed. I was like, didn't know what was going on. And my mum and dad were quite strict on like go to school. So I was sitting like, fuck, I'm going to school here. I haven't slept, I've just been hallucinating for the past 3 hours.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like where it kind of started. And then it kind of went like that for sort of a few years, kind of a lot of after school, going to my mate's house who's, brothers and all got on it, older people got on it. That's just what kind of we did, which is quite weird, because from the outside looking in on paper, I'm not the kind of person that would have got caught up in all this. I'm from like good background, played golf, football and rugby, all at a decently high level. Mum and dad still together, all that. So I think that's one thing, if anyone takes anything from this podcast, is like addiction doesn't discriminate. No matter who you are, what you look like, where you're from, what age you are, anyone can become addicted. But yeah, so that's where it kind of started, and then left school. To be fair to Ince, they made me get my exams. Wasn't allowed to play sport. I won the All-Ireland golfs and stuff with them, but they wouldn't let me play sport or go to the gym unless I did like extra maths classes and stuff like that there.
Yeah.
So they did let me get my, ended up with like 7 GCSEs, and then obviously my mum and dad are quite like old-fashioned, so they wanted the whole go to uni, do this, and I was like, well, I'm not going to school, so I wouldn't like to go to uni, but you can go to tech and do like the equivalent of A-levels.
Yeah. So
I tried that. I think I went to tech 4 times the whole year. Partied, just that was me, Thompson's, Monday to Friday. I was taking turns staying at my mate's house, and then if his mum and dad were going to work, we stayed at my house, and we pretended we waited till they went to work, and then we went and got a bark. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it spiraled for me. And then I got to the last day. I'll never forget the last day, because my mum and dad obviously didn't know, and they were like, "Rory, you have 3 days to hand 24 assignments in," and I was like, "Right." I left them on your desk. You've lost them. So I tried to pull that kind of card.
Yeah.
Didn't work. So I dropped out. Then I knew I wanted to get into the sort of PTing side of it anyway. So then I was like, right, I'm not even going to tell them, mum and dad. I went and paid for my own PTing course. Sort of did that, and then I rang them and told them, and they were like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?"
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But definitely one of the best choices I'd ever made. Cleaned my act up for a full year. Got into the whole bodybuilding. Started working. Really started making my own money. The bodybuilding obviously quite intense, but I really started to enjoy it. So cleaned myself up, didn't really drink, didn't take any drugs, did the whole sort of 16-week diet until it was 4 weeks out and COVID hit, which was kind of like, that was where everything just went poof.
Yeah. You had the goal there and the purpose.
Yeah. So I was working like my whole life. Like I missed birthdays and all, like at that age, you're 16, 17, 18. I was missing my friends' 18th birthdays and stuff, because I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm dieting for this. It's one thing about me, as soon as I get my head into something, I do pretty much go all in, whether that was drugs or whether that was something positive. I do always go fully into something. So was going straight into this 4 weeks out, basically right down to like, well, where I am now for this next one that I'm doing. And then I got cancelled. So then I just started eating, couldn't stop eating, started drinking, couldn't stop drinking. So then I started sniffing coke, stopped me eating, and that's just where it happened. Started getting then I became a full-time cocaine addict, kind of what I call it from then. Lost my job as a personal trainer because of COVID, didn't know when gyms were going to open. I'd moved out of my mum and dad's house, so I was independent. Had to pay for stuff. Obviously, being a coke addict, bills are dear. Yeah. And I just got involved in the crime then. Got wrapped up. All of a sudden, everyone I was hanging around with got involved in it. And that was it. That was me for the next 4 or 5 years. Got pretty deep into that, to be fair. Probably a lot deeper than I ever would have planned on doing. Very hard. Mental health was down in the toilet. And I've learned now the reason I probably became an addict was because the person I had to be when I was involved in all that isn't the person that I want to be, if that makes sense. So I was using the drugs to like cope with being that person, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like even now, my biggest times where I get cravings is when I lose my temper. You know, and obviously in that game there's a lot of violence side of it. There's a lot of temper, losing your temper. There's a lot of stuff like that there.
Yeah.
So I think that's like, I hate being that angry person. So I notice now, I'm like, you know, that could be why. But yeah, spiraled out of control there then basically for the next few years, and then got arrested just after my 21st birthday.
Was there ever a time you were at your lowest, or what was that sort of feeling like, or what was that?
Yeah,
what was going on
so
in
it was
your life?
weird. It's weird because like I didn't really want to live, you know, anymore when I was in it. Like I knew what I was doing every night when I was on it. I knew it could have killed me. You know, I've had seizures, I've had overdoses. I didn't really care. I got up and got back on it. That's how, if I didn't die, you know, that's how I got back on it. I attempted suicide probably 5 or 6 times because of the pressure. Loads of stuff, you know. I'm like, there was, the whole period was a low, you know. I didn't feel like I had anyone, and you know, I know my mum and dad kind of find that hard to believe, but like, if you look at it from my perspective, like I was never gonna go to them after the childhood sort of bring up that I had and be like, yeah, I'm now selling drugs. I'm now a drug addict.
Yeah.
That was never gonna happen. So I kind of like distanced myself, you know, away from them. Didn't really speak. I mean, like my mum's 50th birthday, I didn't even go to it. You know, I didn't have anything for my own 21st birthday, you know, stuff like that there. And then I got arrested 3 weeks or something, I think, after my 21st birthday.
What age are you now?
24.
24.
Yeah, so it's all fresh.
Yeah, it's pretty, yeah.
But I think that's the really important bit about all this, is because like I don't stand in front of anyone and say, you know, I'm fixed. No, I'm still making mistakes. If anything, I'm still learning who I am. Like I'm only sober 2 years next month, so I'm only 2 years who Rory actually is.
Yeah.
The last 7-8 years have been substance Rory. Do you know what I mean? He's made all these mistakes, but now I have to make all these mistakes. I'm learning how to cope with my emotions. I'm learning also of ADHD. Also struggle a bit with my anger and my temper. I'm now learning how to manage that without going and getting on it.
Yeah.
You know, if something goes wrong, I can't drink it away. You know, stuff like that there. So that's still a learning curve, you know, that I'm doing. So
Yeah, I actually seen you had something up the other day, being like 700 days.
yeah,
sober.
700 days sober yesterday, 2 days ago.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's mad.
What way, like do you still go out with friends and all, like in bars or
Yeah,
that sort of
so
environment nearly?
I mean, like, I do stay away from it as much.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy it. You know, I would go out and maybe watch football the odd time, but like, I enjoy driving. You know, I'm like I drive, and obviously I drive everywhere I go. But even like girlfriend and stuff would have Christmas parties, a lot of drinking and stuff.
Yeah.
I go and show my face for a few hours. As soon as everyone gets to that kind of drunk period, I'm like, right, see you later.
Yeah.
I just can't deal with drunk people. To be fair, I've never been the kind of person, you know, if I'm sober and someone's drunk yapping in my ear, I just want to slap them. You know, that's just the truth. And
It's such a socially used.
yeah, I think it's jealousy, to be quite honest. You know, like I say to anyone, like, I don't lie about it either. Like, if I know I could go out and get on it 1 day a week,
Yeah.
and I would never touch it again for another month, I would. You know, there's no one lying about it, you know.
Yeah.
But that's just not the case. You know, I've never just went out for one. People ask me now, sure, you're 2 years sober, can you not go out for one drink?
Yes.
And I'm like, I don't think I've ever had one drink, and if I did have one drink, it'd be 1 liter. You know, like that
Who
kind of
would
thing.
say that? Would that be like friends? or
Friends,
family?
people on social media and stuff, you know, they ask questions, you know, because I think clients as well, you know, they're like, I don't want to give up drink forever. And then I'm like, right, fair enough. But do you want to ruin your life forever? Do you know what I mean? Like some people just can't do it, you know, and that's fine. The same way as some people can't do other things, you know, and it's coming to terms with that, I think, is the hardest thing. And I still do struggle, you know, there's still sunny days. I'm thinking, I'd love to go to the beer garden, you know, and stuff like that there.
Yeah.
Or, you know, because I'm young, all my friends now are going to like AVA, raves, you know, stuff like that there, going on lads' holidays, where they're all getting wrecked, you know, and I just don't really want to put myself, I couldn't put myself in that position, especially unless, like I did go to Benidorm, but it was with people that like I knew wouldn't, they would be more angry at me, you know. So if I was ever in a position, and also they also knew that like, if I felt uncomfortable, they weren't going to be like, you're a pussy, you know, they'd be like, fair enough, go back, you know, that kind of thing.
keeping you in the.
Yeah, they wouldn't have judged me. Everyone knew my situation, so it was good to break that barrier. Did I enjoy it? I did enjoy it. Would I rushed it again? Probably not. You know, I'm very much introvert now, you know, I would say. All I do is work, train, spend time with my girlfriend,
Yeah.
and eat.
What way did like the family situation take the hearing about the drugs and all that type of thing?
Yeah. So obviously before the arrest, no, I didn't really feel like my brothers were probably, I have two younger brothers, and like I would say I kept them safe, but I also think they probably saved my life. You know, I remember there's times where like I maybe had like near died literally on the drugs, and my wee brother would have come and like cleaned the house and looked after my dogs, you know, stuff, and he was probably only 16 at the time, you know, and stuff like that there. Anytime I got into grief or anything like that there, my brothers were always ones to sort of hide me, you know, or anything, you know. So I think I probably traumatized them, to be fair, but you know, they were massive for me. But the first time I really spoke to my mum and dad in a while properly was on a Zoom call inside McGabry, you know, which was pretty heavy. And I actually thought the Zoom call was them coming to tell me that I'm not getting bail, so I'm going to sit tight for the next 4.5 years.
Yeah.
Whenever I did see it was my mum and dad for the first time, I was kind of thinking, fuck, I wish it was the solicitor who would tell me I didn't have to face for all this. But that was life changing for me, I think. I think, you know, all of a sudden I had something to lose, you know, and you know, it's kind of like a little boy's dream, you know, if you think you lose that, and then all of a sudden your mum, like, no one wants to fall out with their mum and dad, you know, and all of a sudden they're there saying they're going to support you, you know, and help you get through this. You've done it now. How can we progress, you know, and get through that? And, you know, they picked me up. You know, my anxiety was so bad I couldn't even speak for the first 2 weeks. I was depressed. I was still getting drugs. I was still on drugs. But they left me. They came up and moved to my nanny's, which is where I was bailed with, and they lived with me for a while. And they were just there for me. And I think that was all they needed to do. You know, they didn't know anything about it. They couldn't really help. They just needed to make sure that, like, I stayed alive.
Yeah.
You know?
How did you feel then whenever they did have your back essentially, and they did?
It was really weird. I think guilt was maybe like a big part of it. You know, I definitely felt like, you know, like guilty a wee bit for what I was doing. Feeling guilty, guilty was probably, definitely was one of, but then overwhelmed. You know, I think having that all just come straight back in to your life. You know, and then hearing that, like, they don't understand how I couldn't have come to them, and that's what hurt them the most. You know, then it's very hard to explain that. You know, it's very hard to like try and explain that, and I don't know if I ever have explained it, and I don't think we need to explain it now. We have such a good relationship now. I don't think we would need to go back in and indulge in all that kind of stuff. You know, it wouldn't benefit anyone. You know, we have a really good relationship now. You know, I speak to my mum and dad nearly every day. Yeah, you know, I don't live with them, but you know, we have a really good relationship. So,
are you okay to talk about like the prison situation?
Yeah, 100%.
Take me through that. Like, what was the sort of first?
Yeah, so I got arrested in a taxi. I had a broken ankle at the time. Got arrested in a taxi by the paramilitary task force. So I was sitting in the taxi. I can remember it like it was yesterday, to be fair, outside Domino's in the Castlereagh Road. And then this like Volkswagen, then a family wagon, then a van pulled up. And all of a sudden, all the blue lights on them. I was like, fuck. It actually didn't even really sink in. The guy pulled up the door, says, "Are you Rory?" I says, "Nope." But then they knew it was me anyway. Took me out. The drugs were in the back of the boot. I actually told them. They actually didn't search the boot, which I thought was weird. But I told them the drugs were in the boot, which actually helped me in my case later, because I didn't try and, I could have just said, hide it, you know. Yeah. Got arrested. So the first stage is non-communicado, which is basically where you can't speak to anyone but apart from your solicitor until they build evidence, and then it gets released on the news. So they were like, I was in there for 3 days, obviously coming off the drugs. I ended up getting a bit of psychosis, thought the walls were closing in. I was sleeping flat out because I hadn't slept probably in like a week. I thought they were trying to kill me, so they ended up having to like post cereal bars into the cells and stuff, because I was losing my temper. And then my solicitor was like, "Do you want to ring your mum and dad?" I was like, dead on, no chance. You know, I couldn't be bothered dealing with that now. So then I got sent declined bail, sent to McGabry, which you basically just get in a bus with a cell like this big, and you're handcuffed, and then you get taken up. Walked out. It's the exact same you see in like movies. Machine guns with people with German shepherds walk in, they ask you to smoke, they give you 5 fags and send you to your cell. And then you go into your cell. I remember thinking, you know, the first cell, this is clean, you know, this is sweet, you know, I can hack this, you know, like that kind of thing. I've got a TV, you know, it's not that bad. I was there for maybe a night, and then they moved me upstairs. Window was put in, there was shit and blood all over the walls. And it was the middle of December, it was freezing. They never actually fixed the window. So then I started losing my head. I started thinking they're trying to torture me here, they wouldn't let me out in population. I had to stay in my own cell. I was only allowed to go to the phone or get a shower, but I was doing all that by myself. And then there was one time when I was going to get my food, I was on the phone and they brought the food, but they set it on like the top of the bunk and I didn't see it. And you get your food the same time every day, so then I thought they were trying to starve me. So then I started cracking up, you know, like going, you're fucking trying to kill me and all. That's where my head was at.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just so horrible. Prison, I don't care how big or hard you think you are, and anyone will tell you, you know, it's horrendous. It's just basically a place where grown men cry.
Yeah.
That's all you hear.
What was the environment like with others? Was it?
Yeah, it's just people screaming,
Is it
shouting, crying, you know, banging. You know, there's not really any peace. All I knew, but Fast and Furious was on 9 o'clock on film 4. So if I made it to 9 o'clock, I knew I had something to enjoy watching.
Yeah.
You know, till 11.
What was going through your head then? Like, what was like?
I don't really know, to be fair.
Yeah.
Like I knew. See, one thing that I think I take accountability for everything, you know, that I've done. I knew I was breaking the law. I never once was bad or harassed a police officer. I knew if I got caught, you know, that was the life I was living. You know, that was part of it. Part of the job role, I say. So I never once, you know, if that was me, that was me. Obviously, I didn't want to stay there, you know, so if I could have got out, I would have. But like my whole mindset, you know, then was like, if I get out, how do I get away from this? You know, because I didn't obviously know my mum and dad were going to be there, so I was going to think, if someone bails me out here, how do I get to Spain? You know, that kind of thing. That's where my mindset was at, you know. I was fully involved, you know. I didn't know any other, like by the time I'd gone through and done it for so long, I didn't know any other way of life, you know. I'd no one there showing me I didn't really have a positive role model to show me that like I could do all this other stuff, because my whole life I always was told I was stupid, you know. I remember even in school, people made comments when I did cross country, oh, you're just good at doing that, you're good at running away from the police. You know, so it all got built into me, you know, I think of it as well. And I know that sounds harmless, but as a young child getting told that subconsciously, you know, it goes into your head.
Yeah.
You know, and prison was intense, you know, to be fair. The mental health and all in there. I said I was suicidal to give me a word search, and then said I'm friggin' dyslexic. What's that going to do? You know?
Seriously,
yeah, there's no help. So I'm actually trying to get my programs within the prison now. Like we have a huge like our prisons are full. Like it's so hard to actually send someone to prison. Never mind who they're sending to prison, I think is another topic, which we're not going to talk about. You know, but like they don't have room to put people in prisons, because obviously you prioritise a reoffender, because they keep breaking the law, that's where they belong to go. But then there's no support system for when people get out of prison.
Yeah.
So then, if you think someone's done 4 years in prison, they get out with 25 quid or 100 quid, they're thinking, nowhere to live, nowhere to go, no family. Going to get this 100 quid, going to get absolutely blocked, and then go rob shops and go back to prison and have a roof over my head.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's no, like, as much as people like to say there's no support network, and if there is, there's not really one doing a good job, clearly, or we wouldn't have it. So I'm really trying to get my program, my 10-week program, into a rehabilitation sort of phase where, especially for younger people getting out of High Bank, or maybe younger, or people getting out of McGabry or whatever, that they then come to see me for 10 weeks, and I can then use my lived experience to show them, like, listen, we all fuck up. You know, but it doesn't need to define you.
Yeah.
There's loads more. Like I learned from being selling drugs was that, you know, I like being an entrepreneur. I love selling stuff. Even in school, I started off, like, I remember I used to steal from Centra and sell cookies. You know, so I've always done that, and then I've always done my own way, like swindle deals and stuff, you know, like that there. So I have obviously that's why I started my own company. You know, when I first got out of prison, I started selling vapes. You know, vapes, and then I opened a confectionery, that's what it's called. You know, like, kind of like a corner shop, but it was online, deliveries.
Yeah.
You know, and I started that, so I've always liked doing all that, and I learned, you know, that's kind of maybe what I did take from doing the whole drug thing. I just had the wrong product.
Yeah.
You know.
So after you left prison, is that when the business idea started to come together, what you're doing now, or how?
No, when I first left prison, I was like, probably about 6 months, I needed to go. I tried getting therapy from the NHS. Awful. It was horrendous. It was a phone call, and they were just calling me a number. They were like, "Oh, today you were 34. Today we were 37. You know, we need to up your antidepressants." You know, that kind of thing. And I kind of got to the head place where I was like, if these actual professionals can't help me, I'm obviously unhelpable. So I just ended up giving that up. Didn't want to be here anymore then. And then I got referred to a charity called Alternatives. Alternatives is a restorative justice charity based all around Northern Ireland. There's offices everywhere. And they basically, first of all, got me into one-to-one therapy in person with a trauma addiction specialist, Emmett Waters, who now works alongside Resolute Minds and is now a very good friend of mine, which is quite cool. And they also took me through a restorative justice program, which is how what I learned about what I was doing wasn't just hurting me, it wasn't just hurting my family, but how I was hurting the community. I met a victim of a mum, so a mum whose daughter got involved in drugs and stuff like that there, actually from where I was selling, so essentially I could have been the one that messed her family up. And that's something as well that I learned. You know, I have to deal with that for the rest of my life, which you don't think about when you're doing it. When you're doing it, you're thinking this is just a transaction. This is 100 quid. You don't care what's happening. But that 100 quid could be their last 100 quid and they're not feeding their kids. They could be going home, sniffing out, falling down the stairs and breaking their neck and dying. You know, and that's the reality, you know, of stuff that I could have caused. So it's coming to process and dealing with all that and, you know, understanding that, which you don't understand. People like to sit and they know what they're doing, you know, and all that there, but when you genuinely are all wrapped up in it, all you're thinking about is the money.
Yeah.
You know, and for me, even it was, how can I get enough money to not get into debt so I can keep sniffing the amount of drugs I want to keep sniffing? You know, and that was kind of the process I was in.
Talk
a bit lost there.
No, you're going to talk me through like the business of what you're doing now and like your mission behind it and everything.
Yeah, so basically, so I started volunteering. Basically, that's how it started. Started getting a really big passion, helping young men's groups sort of around the Shankill area with alternatives. Then I got asked to do One Young World, which is a summit where 197 different countries under 30s come together. It was held here in 2023 because of the Good Friday Agreement. And I was asked to speak at it then. Now I had a tag on, you know, I was trying to hide it. You know, I was with people that had uni degrees talking about all this mad stuff, and I was sitting there going, yeah, I'm a drug addict. You know, I was only 3 or 4 months into sobriety. Spoke at it, got a really good reception. People saying we need young people to talk about these issues. You know, there isn't any, basically. So then I started like becoming obsessed and learning about it, why I became an addict and stuff. So that's when Resolute Minds sort of came into my head. Originally it was just going to be conferences held in like areas with like unis or a lot of students where people could come and learn about my story and maybe have workshops and stuff like that. But then people were like, you can't just help someone for an hour, you know, and be like, see you later, you know, that kind of thing. So I was like, right, okay, let me really see what I can do here. So then I worked out the physical fitness exercise is something that like saved my life. And obviously I have Emmett who does the therapeutic side. And then my story, workshops and stuff like that there. So I created Resolute Minds and an actual organisation that's there to help people, especially, well, I've niched it at young people, but anyone.
Yeah.
You know, my clients at the minute range from 18 to 50, so it's not just young people, but I have a huge passion of helping young people sort of around my age group. But yeah, that's where I kind of scaled off, launched it a year ago in May here.
Yeah.
So it is, so it's still really fresh. It's actually been quite successful, you know, like the places I've got myself into, the people I've been speaking to. Princess Anne came to one of my workshops, trying to get into the American market at the minute, looking at trying to get into the prisons and stuff, looking at getting referrals for one-to-ones, all that kind of stuff's all coming. It just takes time.
I feel like there's a real demand for what you do.
There is a real demand, and people tell you there's a real demand. Do you know what my issue is? No one wants to fund it. You know, and like trying to get people to fund it themselves is harder. I can't get my head around is government funding anything like that there. They don't want to fund a limited company, but it's a limited company for social benefit. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and it's something that's just where my barrier is at. But there is a huge need for it. And, you know, people say, even organisations here, you know, they're like, we need this. This is great, and I'm like, right, well, let's do it. And then they're like, but we can't afford it. You know, like that there, and you're kind of like. You're saying you can't afford it, but then you're going and getting 10 bouncy castles. You know, there has to be some kind of priority here. Do you know, like that kind of thing?
Yeah.
but I'll keep pushing. You know, I'm on LinkedIn harassing our MPs, you know, and stuff like that there. I'm on it flat out, to be fair. Like, I'm good at networking, we are making progress, you know, and stuff. Probably about 20 clients go through at the minute. I get people sober in 90 days is kind of where, you know, I'm at.
Yeah.
It's got a 90% success rate at the minute.
Yeah.
You know, so it works. You know, I can prove it works now. You know, and it's all built off what I've done myself. You know, it's something that's not made up. I didn't make it up. Millions of other people have used it. I'm just hitting it now from that lived experience point of view, which is why instead of getting people sober in 6 months to a year, I can get it done in 90 days, because you tell me something, I can tell you I felt like that. This is how I got over it. Instead of me having to find out what that actually feels like and then trying to figure out a way to get you through it, I can tell you exactly what I did. It cuts all that crap out.
If someone wants to get involved with the business or reach out to you, what's like the process, or how can they go about doing that and things?
So I have a website, resoluteminds.co.uk, which you can inquire on, but I also have like a link tree thing on Instagram, which is just Resolute Minds, or TikTok.
Yeah.
And you can fill it in if you're looking to get one-to-ones, message any questions on there anywhere. I reply to everyone.
Yeah.
To be fair, so.
Because there's your workshops, there's your one-on-ones, there's your speaking gigs, like, and it's actually just seen like, even over the last couple of days, you've done like a couple of talks and things. Yeah.
No, it's been flat out. I did one yesterday down at, was it yesterday? Friday, sorry, down at Ballinafay in East Belfast, which is a men's group. I actually got such a powerful feeling from that myself. It was kind of older men's group, first time I'd done something like that in a wee pub. And it's kind of given me this thing, I think I'm going to try and set up my own men's group, you know, so I just need to find the location and stuff. Maybe that happens once a month where men can come in, because men need to talk. You know, like 60-70% of our suicides are all men. Do you know what I mean? Women love talking. And that's not saying that we're, like, I'm not saying that like women don't matter. I'm saying men struggle to express themselves a lot more. And even at that, you know, Emmett, the guy who ran it, the therapist that works alongside me, he asked the guy, like, do you love yourself? All of a sudden they can't answer it. Do you know what I mean? Or if you ask women, they love themselves, or, you know, they're straight away, you know, it's stuff like that there, where I think men need to, like, or men always feel like they need to provide, they need to do this, you know, they need to have stuff like that there. There's a lot of pressure, especially for young men nowadays, you know, with all this trading bollocks and all that coming out, and everyone's saying, oh, I can become a millionaire in 30 days. And you can't, you know, because if he was making people millionaires in 30 days, he wouldn't be teaching you, you know, like that kind of thing. Yeah. I think that's why people are getting so involved in drugs now, because they see the money, they see the quick fix. And then they're thinking, I'm not going to be able to get this hot girl without having a few quid behind me. Yeah. You know, and then they think selling drugs is going to be the way to do it. But what no one tells you, which is what I try to express, is what happens when something goes wrong. You know, I've been robbed 30 grand before, and then you have to owe 30 grand. You know, all of a sudden you're not rich anymore. You know, you've got to try and sort that out. No one tells you, and you know, it's not you're not just getting told off. No one's ringing the police. You're not going to court. That's when the whole bad side of it, you know, comes in. Yeah. You know, and no one explains that to young people. You think you're making a couple $100 a week, you're loaded. Yeah. It can spiral very, very quickly. Do
you think life's harder for a man now than what it was like 100 years ago with the pressure now, or what do you
think? Well, obviously I wasn't about 100 years ago, so but I know what you mean. Yeah, I do. And I do definitely think for like, I do.
I think trying to be somebody, like, I feel like if you look online,
like there's no positive role models out there. Like, you have people like Andrew Tate, you know, out talking all this crap, and then you have people think I need to be this like dominant man and do all this here, where like realistically, like, I don't understand why there needs to be a figure for anything. You know, I think there's a lot of pressure for men to make a certain amount of money before they can do anything. Do you know what I mean? You know, I think we're in an in-between stage where some people are like, men need to go work and provide, and other ones are like, well, we want to provide for ourselves, but we also want looked after. You know, I think that's fine too, but everyone needs to look after each other.
Yeah. You know, what do you think the reason is for men like struggling to speak up? Like,
ego. Yeah, it's still that huge stigma that like, it's weak to talk about it. Like in America, everyone has a therapist. It's weird if you don't have a therapist. They're like, what's wrong with you if you don't have a therapist? Yeah. We're over here, if you went to your mate and was like, listen, I'm really struggling, they'd probably take a piss out of you. Or like joke about it, you know, and that's just how they're coping with you telling them that you're struggling. But I can tell you, I'd rather have my friend cry on my shoulder for an hour than go to his funeral. And you know, and that's the height of it, especially when drinking all comes into it. Like, they might not even want to, but they might go out and drink to cope with it, and then just make a stupid decision.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, I think men definitely need to start talking. You know?
What about like the business? Where's your vision for it? Where do you want to go with it? And
yeah, so I wanted to go global. You know,
Yeah.
I think it's the first kind of organization of its kind, you know, where we're covering addiction, crime, trauma, mental health. We're looking at the physical aspect and the mental aspect. And we are focused on sort of young people, but it's not just young people, but that is where my sort of focus is at. And then I would love to help people and then employ them and bring them up. So the company has always been brought through on lived experience. Everyone that's in my company has lived experience. That's where I would have it.
Yeah.
I can care less if you went to uni or have a degree in mental health. No, I want to know what's happened to you and how you've overcome that. And then I'd employ you.
yeah, no, I like you said there was like a 90%.
90% success rate.
Success rate. Yeah. Why do you think that is? Is that because you've lived it, like you've had that experience?
Yeah, I do. I think like, you know, I have also got obsessed with the whole like addiction side of it and even how the brain works and stuff, you know, and it's like I kind of, plus the lived experience, like there's nothing you're going to say to me in hindsight that I'm going to work with that I haven't done or felt or been through. So I can just kind of like cut the crap and be like, okay, we'll try this. This is what I did. I try to word it to someone as like, say like you're grieving. Like your mum died and you're grieving and you go to a counsellor and their mum didn't, their mum's still alive, sweet, never been through it, and they're trying to process that and they're like, oh, how'd that feel? And they're like, I'm going home now, my mum's not there. How does that feel? You know, that's an extra like 3-4 sessions where if you had someone there that knows how that felt and you've come home like, I'm going home now, I feel really lonely because my mum's not there. They're like, I know how that feels, this is how I got over that. That's all fixed in 10 minutes. You know, and I think that's the difference. And just the relatability, I think, especially with addiction, you're like, people are like, and I still find it speaking to some clients where sometimes I felt like I was the only one that felt like this, and then they're like, this is how I feel. And I'm like, no, I feel like that too, you know, and I'm learning too.
Yeah.
But the whole lived experience thing, I think, is just like the thing that takes it to the next level. You know, the one thing I will say is like clients need, some clients have come on board, and I think they've come on board just because it makes them feel good. They don't actually want to get help. You know, I think you really need to be in a place where, because it's not easy, and people like getting out of an addiction, getting into recovery, the first month, 2 months, 3 months, a year is going to be the hardest period of your life, but you have to look at it, it's for the rest of your life. You know, where if you don't sort that out within the first year, you might not see the next year. That's the reality of it. You know, and some people come, I think, just to make themselves feel good, because then they can go and get on it on the weekend, knowing that they're getting help during the week. Yeah. You know, like that kind of thing, which it's not going to work. It's something where you have to go all in or not at all.
That's a phrase we hear like all the time, like all in, especially like talking to like high performers and things, and like there's you saying
you have to go all in.
Yeah,
and you have to be disciplined.
Yeah.
I know that's why like I do cold showers every morning and I hate them, but I also love them at the same time. And I do the whole cold water swimming. It helps me with my anxiety, it helps me with my cravings, but it's also something that builds that resilience in my mind, because my mind, the whole time I'm in there or doing something, same as the gym, I've actually noticed that I do a lot of things like this. As soon as stuff gets hard, I try to do it harder, because the way I look at it is I'm training my mind for that time at 3 a.m. when no one else is there, and my wee addict Rory's go and get that bag because life's shit, that I'm now training my mind to be like, no, I have the resilience, I just need to make it till tomorrow and let this pass, because it does pass. Yeah. The feelings pass, you're not going to sit and feel like this forever. You know, if you get the right help, the right support, and you're willing to make that step forward, you will get better. You just need to be able to commit to it and be disciplined to it and work on it. Yeah. You know, and like addiction will kill you, but it'll also, I think, make you stronger than you've ever been whenever you get into recovery.
I've got 3 questions we ask on like every podcast.
Yeah.
But like, and these are a wee bit random, like what's the best piece of advice you've like ever received? Is there something you have?
The best piece of advice I've ever received?
Yeah, is there something you have on like on the daily that you think about, or something that just really resonates with you?
So I have like a quote, which I don't know if it's really advice, but do not let the past define the power of your future. Which I think, I actually have it tattooed in my leg, and I had it tattooed in my leg before I even got out of all the stuff, which I think is mad. Yeah. But it's something I think everyone needs to remember, is like, we all make mistakes. You know, the past, like, stuff we do in the past, like, you can't change it, but you can learn from it. You know, it's not a failure. Everyone makes, you know, if you learn from it, you're going to grow from it and you're going to become a better person. Even if that mistake is probably one of the worst things you can imagine, you know, if you learn from it, well, to a certain degree, but if you learn from it, you know,
it's a win.
And you progress, it's a win. You know, that's why I think what I'm trying to do is like, I believe and I did a video on this, like, I don't believe all drug dealers or people stuck in that are bad people. Like, you can't tell me now that I'm a bad person, but I was a bad person. But I believe I was a good person just stuck in a bad situation and just did bad things because that's all I knew about. And that's all I was doing. That's how I survived at that moment in time. But as soon as I was shown a different road, a different way of life, and I got my support, the right support back in me, I completely changed.
Yeah.
Like the person I am now would not go anywhere near the person I was 3 years ago. And the person I was 3 years ago would not go anywhere near the person I am right now. You know, in a friendship way, the person I am now would go and help the person I was 3 years ago, you know, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And for that to be me is such a weird, like, for me to say that about myself, you know, it's a weird, hard thing to sit with.
Yeah.
You know.
What age did you first take it again?
About 13, 14.
Say like the 13 or 14-year-old version of you came up to you on the street and asking for advice, what would you give him?
13, 14. It's okay to be you. You know, don't try and change for anyone. You know, I think a lot of my trauma and stuff built with was like through trying to impress other people. You know, it's very easily, because my friends were older and stuff, like if someone had told me to jump, I'd have jumped.
Yeah.
You know, if someone, like, there's loads of situations I can picture myself being involved in, and I just did it because everyone else found it funny. You know, I didn't think of the consequences. And I just did that to fit in, even in school and stuff like that there. You know, I think it's okay to be you. You know, it's okay to make mistakes. You know, just stick in there.
Yeah. Is there any events, like say someone's watching this and really resonate with you and your mission, is there any events coming up they can maybe meet you and see more of you?
Any events? I've no events coming up. I don't think, you know, coming up live.
Yeah.
I've got a program coming out, you know.
Is it the 30-day?
30-day recovery program, which we haven't got an exact launch date, but if you follow me or Emma on Instagram or TikTok, we will be talking about it. It's just getting into the final stages now. And it's basically the closest thing to a one, because obviously one-to-ones are dear, you know, so they are, well, people say they're dear, but if you actually look at the percentage you're using to ruin your life, you know, it's not that, you're probably saving money, you know, that kind of thing. But this thing is only going to be like, say, $49, and it gives you 10 coping mechanisms from Emmett as a therapist and 10 physical fitness exercises that you can do within your own home, and they're explained in a video, and you get a journal, and then you can go through and you learn how to journal, you learn how to celebrate your recovery, you learn how to go through all the, basically everything you get, but it's just not tailored to you.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. But it's the closest thing to a one-to-one you'll be able to get. It's more cost effective, and I think it'll change lives. I think it'll be class. Put a lot of time and effort into it. If anyone wants to meet me, come train.
Yeah.
You know, that mental health men's group, I'm definitely going to be setting it up. I'd love to set up maybe like a Sunday walk club and stuff. You know, all these things I'm trying to get into my head. Again, just the issue with starting up a business is I have a million things going through my head at once, you know. And it's trying to just nail certain things down. But I do think the men's group, you know, is going to be something I might focus on here for a while.
Is there anything you want to touch on when you're here and stuff? Is there anything that's coming up like you really want to speak about, and then we can sort of help promote?
Yeah. I would just like to promote, you know, if anyone needs help,
yeah,
you know, to really reach out, you know, make that first first contact, you know, that kind of thing, you know. Again, obviously stuff costs money, but like it's not all about the money. If someone really needs help, you know, there's things there that I can help them with,
yeah,
you know, and do stuff like that there. But you're investing in yourself is going to be the best thing you'll ever do. The way I look at it is, if you really want to make a change, like if you're going out right and you're going out on a weekend and you're putting 300 quid up your nose and you come to work with me and you're not willing to give that up, it's not going to work anyway. And it's probably costing you minimum 30, 40 quid a week to come to me. So you're saving 150 quid a week. Do you know what I mean? By going. So it's like you're actually saving money, you know, by doing it. But yeah, reach out for help, talk, start talking, you know, stuff. But
yeah,
I don't really have any events coming up, to be fair. No, I've kind of just missed them all.
No, but I appreciate you coming on and talking about it. I think it's a really great thing.
Yeah.
And then what you're doing, I think it's probably really, really needed here in Northern Ireland.
I think it's needed everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's I think especially in the UK, I think we're in a drug epidemic for young people. You know, I think drugs are killing young people. I don't think there's enough, like schools, why are they not, like you have sex ed, why are you not having drug ed? you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't think schools, I think they're starting to get more aware of it. I've been into schools, I've been talking in schools, but like they should have it within LLW, something that's mandatory for people to learn that like, this is what happens, and I would happily go in and teach it if someone was going to let me go in and teach it. You know, and you know, just because you take coke this Saturday doesn't mean it's not going to mix with fentanyl and kill you next Saturday. You know, just because you know you can pay it this weekend doesn't mean you're going to be able to pay it next weekend because something else could happen.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of things that I think young people need to be aware of. You know, the scariest thing about being an addict is you can't get tested for it. You can't go and give your bloods and someone's like, yeah, you have addictive genes. You know, you could just take that one line and all of a sudden you're like, fuck, my day feels good, feels better. And tomorrow you've had a bad day and you're like, that shot made me feel good that day, I'll do it again.
Yeah.
Then your tolerance gets more and then you're doing it and all of a sudden you have 7 bad days in a row. You've done it 7 days a week. Then you get into the come down, the withdrawals, and that's too intense and you're on it, and that's how you get wrapped in that whole cycle. And then your tolerance gets more, so then you need to get more, and maybe you can't afford to get more, and then you get into that, and then you know, as you can see, it just can spiral so out quickly, so quickly.
What do your family and friends say whenever you're like, hey, why are you talking on a podcast and they'll hear about it and things?
Yeah,
are they all supportive? They
are, yeah. No, I think that's something that's been really. I think at the start everyone was like, you know, we want you to get a stable income, you know, do all that, and I work in a chippy as well while I do this. You know, I work for Resolute Minds as much as I can, but also bills need paid still at the same time as well. So I work in a chippy too, but very supportive, and I think they've all seen my goal. And like to be fair, if I was going to pat myself on the back, I do what I say I'm going to do, you know. And if it means I have to sit up till 4 o'clock on a Sunday night and work all day to do it, you know, I'll do it. And I think because they've now seen that I've stuck at it.
Yeah.
Because again with my ADHD, I don't stick at stuff very long. If I like start to lose interest, I'm just like, fuck that, I'm not doing it anymore. But this is now something that technically for the last 2 years I've been given my whole life to, you know. So they're very, very supportive, you know. And it's weird now, you know, I don't know, but Dad won't mind me saying, you know, he rung me and told me he was proud of me, you know. And that's something like, again, men talking, something's very, maybe quite old fashioned, you know, something that's not normal, like wouldn't have been normal, you know, to hear, you know, from my dad. I would say a lot of young men probably understand that kind of thing. But yeah, even my friends and stuff now, like I make the effort, I hug all my friends when I see them, you know. I say I love them, you know, and all that there. And that's weird for a man to do to another man, you know, especially nowadays, but I think we just need to start breaking that barrier. I'll always tell my kids I love them, you know, and all that. I want my son to come in when he's 18 and hug me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, I think that's where we need to get life to. You know, just take this masculinity crap out of it.
Yeah.
We have feelings too. You know, it's okay to cry.
Yeah. Mate, thanks so much for coming down. Like,
no problem at all. Yeah, thanks for
trying to get into the room.
Yeah, no, it's 100%.
But no, I appreciate you coming down. If there's any way we can help you on your journey in your business, stuff, let us know.
Perfect.
And then, or if there's any events coming up, we'll come support.
100%.
So, mate,
sounds
so
good.
much.
Thanks for having me down.
No problem. That's been all from the official Young Hunger podcast. I hope you guys have enjoyed. I'll catch you in the next one.